EU leaders to request fighter jets and long-range missiles.
OK. Let's get the analysis of the former aide to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, and that's Leon Emirali, who joins us now. Well, it was a surprise visit. How would you rate it? How did it go down?
I think it was a pretty stunning piece of political theatre, really, wasn't it? I think the surprise element of it, the huge crowd that he got in Parliament of both houses, and I think that ultimately Zelensky probably got what he wanted, which is a commitment from the UK to at least look at sending jets. And I think Rishi Sunak got some of what he wanted. The front pages today, pictures of Rishi with tanks as a backdrop and military gear on, so looking tough and looking like the international statesman.
Well, it went down well with President Putin, didn't it?
That's the issue. I mean, look, President Putin, Vladimir Putin, has been issuing chilling warnings since the very start of this war against the West, and I think there has to be a point where ultimately, you know, the UK and its allies stands up to Putin, has to make sure that we are able to prepare Ukraine for an offensive in the spring, if that's what they believe is coming.
But look, we've got Boris, you know, shouting from the sidelines, give the fighter jets, and we've got difficult questions being put to the Prime Minister during a press conference saying, why is your successor doing this and you're not coming up with the goods? But almost, you know, a few days since we've been talking about the problems with our defence budget and how we're not backfilling the resources that we're giving to Ukraine. And fighter jets are hugely costly. And I suppose as a nation, we have to ask ourselves the question, do we want to give Zelensky what he wants?
Yeah, that is a perfectly legitimate question. And you look at the US, which is saying, no, actually, we're not going to give you the fighter jets because we have to make sure we've got the military stock if and when it's needed. Obviously, God forbid, it's never needed, but that's the whole point of a military, is that you have got those military stocks. And if we're giving them all away to Ukraine, it does leave the UK's position slightly vulnerable, not least from an economic standpoint as well, where there's issues here in terms of cost of living and the wider economy in the UK domestically. So lots of questions to be asked.
Boris Johnson may make out Ukraine as his territory. What do you think it would have been like for him being an onlooker to yesterday's event?
I think it would have hurt Eamon. I think he would have been wanting to be the Prime Minister who welcomes Zelensky to the UK. And I think, you know, him hot-footing it across Parliament to be there, to be in that room and to get that name check, I think, is important to him. But again, Zelensky playing it very diplomatically. I think he understands and recognises the role Boris Johnson still plays in British politics, and therefore, had to name-check Boris Johnson to ensure that if and when there is a change, that still that relationship is intact.
Yeah, I think people yesterday in Westminster understanding the political capital of being seen or associated with Zelensky. You know, they're all falling over each other to try and get a handshake or a picture with them, weren't they? And you could sense there was genuine, a really kind of emotional response to him in Westminster. And you think of all the history of that room, just not that long ago, the Queen lying in state in there. Yeah. Amazing speeches over the years, whether it's Winston Churchill, Obama, who else? Nelson Mandela. It was a moment of sort of national pride and history taking place yesterday.
Definitely, and I think it positions the UK as a global leader, and I think, you know, we have to be proud of that ultimately the Ukraine's borders were breached by an aggressor in Russia, and the UK were one of the first and one of the major supporters of it. And I think that is a moment of national pride, and again for Sunak to be on the international stage, someone who's strong, someone who's who's willing to stand up to someone like Putin.
I thought it was interesting how